about 9 years. Initially, I was the regional director in the Southwest. So I worked on all kinds of advocacy projects in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, working with state parks, city parks, county commissioners, the Forest Service, the BLM, a whole range of partners. And we worked on developing mountain bike trail access projects pretty much from the ground up. And then a couple of years ago, I transitioned into IMBA's development department. So my work now primarily focuses on fundraising. I work with major donors. I do some grant writing. And for the past couple of years, I managed the Trail Accelerator grant program, and it has recently transitioned over to Marty. So this will be my final presentation around the Trail Accelerator grant, and then Marty will be taking things from here. But yeah, big thanks to everyone. We have a really phenomenal diversity on this call today. I think we have folks from about 33 or 34 states around the country, which is pretty awesome. And I'm really impressed to see the diversity of the types of folks that are interested. Just I had a little quick look at the list last night, and we have folks on here from organizations like the Trust for Public Land, the New England Mountain Bike Association, Mountain Bike the Tetons, which is an IMBA chapter up there in up further north from me. We have folks from Mount Wilson, which is an IMBA chapter in California. Looks like there are folks from Silverton, Colorado, Portland, Maine, North Carolina, Arboretum, Ohio, New Mexico, Texas. Quite a few folks in from Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, which is awesome. IMBA have done a lot of work in those states in the past couple of years. So it's really cool to see that we have this really solid diversity of folks interested in the program. And I think that's really important to emphasize that that we're always excited to see that we have a sort of a big tent approach. We have a broad range of people who are coming to IMBA to hear about our programs and hear about the support that we can offer. And something that I really want to emphasize with this grant opportunity is that even though this is a grant for trail planning, in the application process, we may have folks who are applying who have never worked on a trail grant before, have never worked on a grant before, have maybe never worked on a trail project before. And then the other end of the spectrum, we likely have land managers on this call who are very familiar with trail development processes and trail planning. So it's awesome to see this whole range of people. And we really emphasize in the application process that don't be intimidated if you haven't worked on a trail project before.
The left side of it is, there was.
Can someone go on mute there, please? Thank you. So we're really excited to see this range of applicants. We think it's awesome to have so many different types of organizations. In the past, we've had grant proposals from community health groups, and then at the other end of the spectrum, state parks departments. We've had grant applications from land trusts. So we really appreciate having all of these different types of groups interested in our work. Let's see. So we've done the introductions. Marty was on there. I'm Patrick. I'm based in Prescott, Arizona. And like I said, I've been with IMBA for about 9 years. And let's see. We're going to talk a little bit about the program. We're going to show some slides about the impacts that the program has had. We'll pass it over to Marty. She'll talk about the timeline and some other sort of logistical pieces that are necessary for the grant. We'll talk about a couple of examples. We have 23 different active Trail Accelerator grant projects around the country. Obviously, I won't review all 23 of them in detail, but we'll talk about a couple of them in some more detail, and we'll bring up some others along the way. Then we will review the application form. The application form is live and it's online on our website. Folks can access that. So we will go through the application form. We're not going to go through every single question in exact detail. We will be available for follow-up calls. And then we will leave time at the end of this call for questions that folks might have. And I think Marty's going to be monitoring the chat function during the call so that we can address things as they go. So in a nutshell, the Trail Accelerator grant program it's an in-kind grant specifically for trail planning. and it's not available for construction, but it's available for planning at any level. Trail planning could involve maybe you're very early in the process and you're interested in a more conceptual plan of the types of trail activities and types of trail development that could take place on a parcel of land, or maybe you're ready for a really detailed trail plan. So the grant can cover anything in between, but it's not available, just to emphasize, it's not available for construction, it's specifically for planning. And the grant covers half of the cost. So let's say you were developing a trail planning process and it was going to be a $20,000 trail planning process. The Trail Accelerator grant can cover half of that. So we could cover half, and the municipality or the state parks or whatever, or the mountain bike club or your land trust, whatever the applicant is, they're responsible for the other half, and that half gets paid to IMBA as cash, and then we do the trail plan. So essentially, you're paying for half and we're paying for half. That's roughly how the program works. Let's see. So a little bit here about the impact to date. Sorry, I'm having a little technical glitch getting rid of the poll. Bear with me a second. Okay, there we go. Let me just go back a couple here. So the impacts of the program, we have had 72 proposals to date. That has come from 4 different grant cycles. So we tend to get about 20 or so, 25 proposals in each grant cycle, and we have funded a total of 23 applications. So we have had requests for over $1 million in support, and we have awarded $345,000. So we're able to fund about 1/3 of the proposals that we get. And it's not an exaggeration to say that all the proposals that we get are really good, and we wish we could fund all of them. Every single one of them represents a great opportunity to get more people outdoors on mountain bikes. It's simply that we have limited funds, and we have to focus on which ones we think really rise to the top. So we have awarded just over 345,000. And because it's a matching program, it has been matched with 345,000 from each of those from the communities that received the grants. Then what we have found out recently is that the program has leveraged an additional 7.85 million. So once we complete the trail plan and we deliver that trail plan back to the community, that's the sort of the most basic concept of what the program is. We do the plan, we deliver it back to the community. And what we're seeing is that those communities are now taking the trail plans and they're putting significant amounts of money into their, whether it's their city budget or their parks department budget or their land trust budget for construction. So the 345 that we have allocated was matched with 345,000, and cumulatively it has leveraged 7.85 million for construction, which is pretty phenomenal. We're very excited to hear that so many of the projects now have really big dollars attached to them, and a lot of the projects are getting underway and getting built, which is really cool to see. So here's just a little graphic to show where the projects have been funded and where we've got applications from so far. So you can see the green are the ones that we've funded. In the western states, you can see it's been a little bit more sparse in the western states. One in Nevada, one in Utah, a couple in New Mexico, one in California, one in Oregon. Then there's been quite a few in the Midwest, and then the eastern states. We've done lots of projects in Tennessee, a couple in Wisconsin, a couple in West Virginia. So the projects are, like I said, each and every one of them is awesome, but there's a limited amount of money that we have. You can see, for example, at New England, we haven't done any Trail Accelerator grants up there. And then there's definitely a spot, sort of the Northwest, Idaho, Montana, Washington. We haven't done a lot in those states either. So one thing to really emphasize with this project is that IMBA's not so much our mission, but our guiding principle or the North Star for IMBA these days is the term more trails close to home. And we're very conscious in coming up with that statement and focused on what it means. We want to see trail projects designed and delivered that are going to impact as many people as possible. And obviously that's different in that's different in a big metropolitan area, say in Georgia, in the Atlanta area, and it means something very different to a very rural community in Nevada. But an example I would use in, say, in the Western states is Ely, Nevada, where we have developed a Trail Accelerator grant program, a Trail Accelerator grant project. And Nevada is obviously a very empty, very rural state, but the applicant really highlighted that there's an established and a growing mountain bike community in Ely. It's a town of about 4,000 people in the middle of a vast empty desert in Nevada. And they emphasize that it's a very busy tourist town. There's it's on Route 50, a busy tourist route. And there's a growing mountain bike scene, and there's a growing NICA scene. They've got high school mountain bike leagues. And so we felt that, even though it's a very rural state, the trail system isn't in a very remote place in that state. The trail system is located right downtown in Ely and accessible right from Main Street. So in that context, more trails close to home fits. And similarly, like I said, in any of the projects that we do in any sort of the Midwestern or Eastern, more populated suburban areas, we really see the value and we prioritize higher those projects that are going to get more people out riding. It could be that a project is located somewhere that's close to maybe diverse populations that are typically excluded from outdoor recreation. So we really want to see, the broad spectrum of racial diversity on the trails. We want as many people out riding as possible. Maybe there's a grant proposal that will impact adaptive riders. Maybe there's a community that has an adaptive sports program, and they want to develop a trail system that will get folks on hand cycles out riding. Phenomenal way to broaden the diversity. Or maybe there's a very robust or growing women's mountain bike programs in a community. Again, we would see that's a really great way to diversify mountain biking, and it would certainly fit into the IMBA model of more trails close to home. Let's see, we're going to talk about, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but here's just a list of the types of applicants and interested parties that we've seen in the past. We've had federal agencies apply, for example, the US Forest Service, the National Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management. There are agencies, the BLM are typically a more Western focused agency. The US Forest Service have properties all over the country, from North Carolina to the Northern California. So we do see a lot of interest from the Forest Service. We certainly see a lot of interest from city, county, and state parks departments. We definitely see and we appreciate seeing applications from groups like chambers of commerce and economic development departments, groups that really feel that mountain biking is a great way to attract people to their community. Maybe a small town wants to attract a different demographic, a different workforce to come and live in the community, and obviously be part of the tax base and part of the community. So we see that chambers of commerce and economic development departments, for local resident reasons and also for tourism, they see that developing trails is a really good thing, and we certainly support that. We have had interest from community health organizations. I can think of the DeQueen Lake project in Arkansas. That application came from a community health group, and it really sticks out in my mind that they emphasized that with the trails, they were going to impact Hispanic communities, and also they had a sort of a fledgling smoking cessation program for young people, and they were going to use trails as a way to get folks who typically aren't outdoors recreating, or folks who aren't making healthy choices. Having trails close to their community was going to be a great way to get those people outdoors. Land trusts and conservancies. It's great to see that we have someone from the Trust for Public Land on this call. We have done a project, I think it's currently in the works, up in upstate New York with the Nature Conservancy. Again, that's their phenomenal organizations. And then there are local local land trust, regional land trust, statewide land trust. So we're definitely seeing growing interest from those types of organizations. And then certainly mountain bike clubs and local trail groups, whether they're all volunteer or whether they're small organizations that have one or two or a few staff. So we're seeing the mountain bike clubs and the trail groups starting to apply, which is great. It's worth emphasizing that we are cautious about projects that are specifically on private land. For example, a HOA who wanted, like say, a homeowners association who wanted to develop a trail system just for residents in a neighborhood and not open to the public. That certainly wouldn't be a priority for us. Similarly, if a trail system was at a ski resort, that wouldn't be a priority either. But certainly trails that are on public land or land that's owned by a land trust or a conservancy that's open to the public, that's the type of projects that we really highlight. Let's see. So we're going to talk now a little bit about the Trail Accelerator grant project that we did here in Prescott, Arizona. I'm using this one because I'm based in Prescott and that's the one I'm most familiar with. So in this project, it was probably the 2019 grant cycle that they applied. And in Prescott here, there's a lot of multi-use single track, but there was a growing call from riders and lots of people in the community that they wish to see more diversity in the trails, and they wish to have mountain bike optimized gravity trails. So through several years of conversation with the Forest Service and the City Parks Department, we identified an area that was suitable, and the local the city and the local mountain bike club applied for the Trail Accelerator grant. So they were the applicant, but the parcel of land is United States Forest Service. It's Prescott National Forest, and it's only it's a couple of miles from downtown Prescott. It's already a busy trailhead. It's close to a very busy day use area with lakes and bathrooms and a very busy campground as well. So we felt that this is a project that's it's not in a super remote location. It's accessible to a lot of people. It already sees a lot of use. And we think this is a way to impact many more people. It's going to be great for local kids and local residents. We emphasize that there are a lot of NICA high school race teams in Prescott, and yeah, it seemed like a really good project. So this project in Prescott was awarded $10,000 through the Trail Accelerator grant, and it was matched by $10,000 by the local mountain bike club. And the local mountain bike club knocked it out of the park. They literally got a really nice bike. They got a Pivot, I think either donated or they bought it at a very low cost. And they sold like 100 tickets at $100 each for a bike raffle, and they raised $10,000. So that was a very simple way that the local club raised the funding. And that plan was completed in the fieldwork was 2020. We couldn't have a big public meeting in June 2020 because of the coronavirus. So we had a conference call with any interested parties while our co-worker was here doing the actual fieldwork. And then they come up with a very detailed report. It's a 40-page plan, and then this is the graphic that comes along with it, showing the layout of the trails. So this plan is currently with the Forest Service for NEPA for their internal permitting. And then we hope to get started on the fundraising later on this year and break ground next year. So I'm going to pass it over to Marty. Marty, a couple of slides for you to talk about, starting with the timeline.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. So this is the general timeline for the grant. It basically gives you 2 months to fill out your application. We will have the application truly going live on June 1st. But the beauty is during that 2 months, you can edit it and change it as much as you wish. As you get more information, you can just save it as a draft. However, even if you do submit it and some things change, please just reach out to me and I can get back in there and edit it for you, or return your permissions to you. And then once we close it at the end of July, we're going to make every effort to turn this around quickly and Oh, sorry, Patrick, you threw me off for a second there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get back to everyone pretty quickly. You may even hear from me along the way after you've submitted if I read your application and I come up with some questions and want to follow up, because my goal is to help you submit the best application possible. So um, just know that if I see that you've left some questions blank that we'd like the answers to, or I'm curious if you've really told us everything that could really help your application, I'll be reaching out to you just to help you. If you are new to the application process, my role is to help you out. So just reach out to me at any point.
Marty, give me 1 second. For some reason, the presentation just disappeared. Let me pull it up again.
No worries, Patrick.
Let's see.
Yeah, just butt in whenever you're ready, Patrick.
Yeah, just give me a second here. For some reason, it just blanked on me. Oh.
I was going to say, if folks haven't been looking at the chat, we had someone make a very good point about how government entities often fund trails around paved, but paved paths, but rarely actual natural surface trails. And one thing that can help is to give them some good data around the benefits of having natural surface trails. So if you're in that situation, please send me an email. I have tons of great studies, both health related and economy related, all kinds of great stuff that I can share to help you make your point with land agencies.
Is that screen share back on, Marty?
I do see it, yes.
Awesome. No, I'm not sure why I'm having a technical error here, but it's not letting me. It's not letting me play for some reason. Just bear with me while
Sorry, folks.
I deal with this.
You always have the most technical difficulties when you have the most people wanting to see what you have.
Let me close it, and I'm gonna reopen it again. 1 second. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, we have another person asking if we provide support regarding budget development. Like if, for instance, if you have no idea how much it's going to take to get your project off the ground, that can be a key part of the trail plan that we produce for you, is to give you a cost estimate. Because once we've been there and kind of walked the property and seen what's there, we can have a much better idea of what things might cost. And so we can at least give you an estimate. It's wouldn't be an estimate you would want to count on that exact number, because obviously things will change from the planning stage further on into design and construction, but we can get you pretty close.
Is that back up, Marty?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Here we go. That's where we were, and this is where we'll start from again. Do you want to jump in on this one, Marty?
Sure. Sorry, I was still looking at the chat. Depending on what kind of organization you are, getting the money to us can be more challenging than others. Obviously, if you're a mountain bike organization, it's probably pretty easy for you to just write in a check for your half of the match. But often if you're a municipality or other organization that goes through procurement, you'll need to look into that ahead of time and make sure that you understand how your procurement process works, and to make sure that you can actually send this money to IMBA in a way that works with your financial system of your organization. So I apologize that this is a little bit of a vague thing, but every organization is a little different. So if you're going to apply for the Trail Accelerator grant, please just reach out to your accounting department and ask them, how will this money be dispersed, and can I have it in time for contract signing? So it's just really good to look into that ahead of time, so you don't spend a bunch of time on your application or have any surprises and then find out you can't get the money in the time frame needed. And if you have any questions about that, please do reach out. And then here I'd like to chat with you a few things that I wanted to highlight in the application that we'll be really looking at these particular questions. One of them is we're really interested in who your partners are. It's really hard to get a trail system or a bike park off the ground without any partners. Trying to do something alone is really challenging. And it's also harder to find funds when you're working alone. So the more partners you have, the more success you tend to have. So we kind of just want to hear who you're working with. Not only to build the trail project itself, but who you're going to partner with maybe for programming afterward. We'll be curious to see if your trail system or bike park will, help youth programs or engage in like a high school racing team or any of those things. So we'll be really curious to hear what's happening in your community with that. And also around community engagement, which in this frame means, how well does the general public understand what you're doing? Every community kind of needs to weigh in and discuss these projects and see how it impacts other aspects of the town or the community. So we want to make sure you're going through those steps as well. And then implementation can be tough. If you're at the very start of this project, you may have no idea how your project will go into the next steps. And that's okay. We're not, judging projects based on that, every step of the way yet. But if you've thought about it, we kind of would like to hear how you picture your project unfolding all the way through into the construction phase, if you know. And then lastly, funding. We'll ask you if you know how much you think your project's going to cost, but it's okay if you don't. And it's okay if you don't have a lot of money currently. This grant is here to help in that exact situation. As Patrick was saying, once you have this trail plan, it kind of becomes your project's calling card. You can use it almost as a marketing piece to help, source funding. You can show it to people because once they see the plan and once they really get that visual nature of what you want to do, people tend to get more excited. It's a great way to communicate what you're trying to build. So your funding will naturally grow further, as you go through this, as you saw from the money we leveraged on earlier projects. And then there's also a social media component. Obviously, it's really hard for us to know what's happening with projects and spread the word and get more people interested in this grant, and therefore, getting more projects off the ground in the future if we don't get to see what's happening. So we do have some social media requirements, and we'll be asking you which social media channels that you'll be using to promote your project and the grant.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump back and talk about another project now, which is on the larger end of the scale, and this is in La Crosse, Wisconsin. This was a partnership with an organization called Outdoor Recreation Alliance in the city of La Crosse, and they applied for $30,000, which is certainly on the higher end of the scale, and they matched it with $30,000, which was the requirement, and really phenomenal project. The area is called Grandad's Bluff. Very close to town, very close to neighborhoods, a really unique piece of property. And they developed a trail plan that let's see if we have there's the plan right there. We developed this trail plan, and what we found that after the trail plan was completed and delivered, they were able to the city allocated maybe $300,000, and a local private donor came in with $100,000. So they had, their initial expense up front was 30 grand to get the plan done, and that leveraged $400,000 for construction, which is pretty significant. So you can see that they're building a lot of this really nice bike optimized trails, mechanized building. IMBA didn't necessarily do the construction here. We did the trail plan. Then the city allocated the funding, and it went out to bid, and another contractor bid on it. A local contractor got it, and they bid on it and got the award. And they're building some really nice trails. I think they have maybe 5 or 6 miles, really close to neighborhoods, close to urban areas. And they've got the flow trails built, the bike optimized trails, and I think there's a second phase starting maybe next year. And this project was recently highlighted in Free Hub magazine, a very popular mountain bike magazine, both print and online. And and on their website and Facebook, they had some really solid coverage of this project. So La Crosse, Wisconsin is an example of a project that has done really well and has been very successful so far. Let's see. So what I'm going to do now, Marty, I'm going to switch back over to the actual online application form. I'm going to talk through that a little bit, and then we'll have time for questions. Does that sound good? I think
Absolutely.
you're on. Awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing now, Marty, and then we'll let me pull up the application form. We can talk through that, and then let's see. Just give me a second here to find it. Okay, here's the form.
Patrick, while you're pulling that up, I'm going to address
Yep.
one quick chat question.
Go for it.
Mario was asking if there are site visits associated with the plan. So yes, if you're awarded a tag grant, we do send one of our Trail Solutions staff out to assess your property. And, that's a key part, obviously, of developing the plan. We certainly do some desktop, analysis of, GIS and KMZ and all those kind of files that we get to look at on technology, but nothing beats walking on the ground.
Is this screen share working, Marty?
Yep, I see it.
Awesome. Cool. So so for all the folks on the call, this is the actual application form that'll be available from June 1st. It's very straightforward. We're not trying to, we haven't developed a process to try and catch people out. We're not thinking that way. We want to get as many really good applications as possible. And like I said earlier, we want to emphasize that that if you're very adept at trail planning and it's something that you're in a department and you're very familiar with, that's awesome. We love working with those partners. Similarly, if you've never worked on a grant application and you've never worked on a trail project, but you think that trail development is going to be really good for your community, we'd love to see those proposals as well. So we've tried to keep this application pretty straightforward. And like I said, it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be too technical. We want to hear sort of the really fun and interesting and engaging parts of your project. That's kind of what we're going to focus on. So you can see it starts with some just basic contact information here. The name of your organization, where you're located, just that pretty simple background stuff. We ask for a description of the organization just to let us know who you are and what you're working on. Having written support is really, really good. Like, let's say your project is, or your concept is supported by the mayor or the city council, or maybe the head ranger in the park you want to work in. Those kind of documents are really important for us to see that there is that local support. So you have a chance to upload those documents here. We ask about other projects that you've done in the past. Maybe you haven't done any, but we ask if you have done a similar project, let us know about it and what were the impacts. We ask a little bit here about partnerships, who else is involved in the project. So we like to see, if you've reached out to, say, your local high school mountain bike team, maybe your state parks department, maybe there's a summer camp involved, maybe there's a community health organization that's working on regional or local anti-obesity initiatives. Those sorts of partnerships are really good to list in here. We ask here if you've attended any past IMBA Trail Labs or any of our previous workshops. This little box is just about social media. Marty covered that earlier. And then we will be asking for follow-up. So this is just contact information for who we can follow up with on the project to find out where things are at, in 6 months or a year's time or 18 months time. Then we get into the details about the actual project, the project title, where it's located. We do ask for a KMZ or KML file. There's a little tutorial here on YouTube. If you click this little link, it shows you how to create this very simple map to show us, to identify the parcel that you're working in. We ask a little bit about the size of the parcel, just so we can get our head around, what type of what's the scale of this project, and then certainly how much time it's going to be on the ground. Whether it's, if it's a 50-acre park, then it's a smaller plan, then that's going to take less time than, when by time I mean field time, staff in the field actually reviewing the terrain and drawing the maps and coming up with the data. Or maybe you're working on a much larger parcel, maybe in the national forest somewhere, or maybe on a BLM parcel. So it's good for us to know what size of parcel we're talking about. And the ownership. Quite often we find that folks have grand visions and grand ideas about what to do, but if they haven't necessarily spoken to the land agency, that can really hold things up. So we want to know, what stage are you at in terms of the relationship with the landowner and whose property is it? like I mentioned earlier, private property, for example, a homeowners association, if that was just limited to residents of a neighborhood, that wouldn't be a high priority project. We want these to be open to the public for as many people as possible. And then this question here, this is one that you can certainly chat with Marty about, during the application process to find out, it's worth clarifying what we consider a feasibility study might be different than what you consider a feasibility study, or what we consider a construction bid package could be different than what you consider. So it's worth clarifying with Marty as you go through the process as to, what are the, what type of deliverable will we come up with at the end of this process? Will it be a very rudimentary, high level concept plan, or will it be a very detailed, trail design with actual pin flags on the ground ready for construction? So that's worth clarifying with Marty. We ask a little bit here about the parcel that you're working on, the topography, the proximity. Is it next to a state park and a campground? Is there an existing parking lot? Or maybe there isn't. Like it's fine if there isn't. It's just we want to know either way if there is sort of existing infrastructure in the area. We ask a little bit here about previous trail planning. Maybe you haven't done any and you're completely new to this. That's totally fine. Or maybe there have been other similar trail plans that have been completed in the area or with your agency. So it's good to know what other types of things have been done. And then if there is an example of another trail planning process, or maybe, for example, maybe your city has a vision document as to what the development of recreation infrastructure for the next 20 years is going to look like. Maybe your city council has done something like that. They're good documents to attach so that we know what other conversations are in the works in the community. Then these are just questions here about about diversity. Are the trails going to be accessible to for recreation, for community engagement? How are they going to get lots of people out riding? And for any of these questions, don't feel that you have to write multiple very detailed, extensive paragraphs. We certainly give us the background and give us the highlights and the impacts, but don't feel that it has to be sort of each question has to be 2 pages of 8-point font paragraphs. It can be totally fine that it's a more concise, crisp summary. We ask what the 3 to 5 outcomes that you want to get out of this process are, just so we can gauge what does the community want from this process. Question here about diversity. A couple of questions about diversity actually. So does the project include youth programs? Is there an opportunity to get the next question talks about diversity, equity, and inclusion, after school programs, riders with disabilities. So it's great to hear that you're thinking in terms of getting as many people of all across the spectrum of diversity out riding. That's very important to us. Another piece could be that maybe your project is going to be very beneficial for economic development in the community. Again, would love to hear the background on that. What do you think it's going to do in terms of attracting visitors, or maybe a trail system could be very good for local businesses in terms of attracting qualified staff. People want to live in a community where there's great recreation opportunities. So maybe that could be a reason for wanting to develop the trail system. And then we have a question here about implementation. Like, what's your vision or what's your goal for funding for implementation 2 years or 3 years, 5 years down the line? Couple of questions here, more specific. Is it a bike park? Is it an actual more longer distance trail plan? Is it a combination of both? What type of facilities would you like to see developed? What style of trails? Maybe it's multi-use, non-motorized trails that are open to bikes and hikers and trail runners and equestrians. Or maybe what you want to develop is a bike optimized, more sort of a flow trail, gravity trail system. So there's a drop down over here where you can select the type. Again, another question about who else is going to be using these trails. Are they going to be single use? What kind of mileage do you expect? What other amenities are there? Question here about funding for the next steps. You know, are there conversations in the works? Quite often a city will have maybe allocated funding 2 years out or 3 years out for construction. So it's good to us to know those sorts of things. Question here about phases. Are you thinking this is going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 phase project over maybe 3 or 4 years? Is it going to be hand built? Is it going to be mechanized? Let's see. The question here about public engagement. You know, are you going to be doing public comment periods and surveys and such? And then the timeline. You know, when you'd like to see the project developed. How long do you think it'll take? And then let's see. These are all just check boxes, so don't be feeling that this is like, you know, extensively long. A lot of these are yes and no. We ask a little bit here about the funding needs. You know, this is really an acknowledgement that your organization is aware and in agreement that it's a matching grant program, so that if you apply for $5,000 and your organization has to commit another $5,000, and then IMBA will do a trail plan, a planning process that's going to be $10,000 in value. So these couple of buttons just are acknowledging that you agree to that. And that's pretty much the application form. Like I said, it's we've deliberately kept a lot of these kind of just drop downs and yes and no to keep it simple. And then any of these boxes, like, you know, where you can type some text in, don't feel that you have to write, you know, it doesn't have to be 1,000 words for each. You know, give us a very crisp 2 or 3 sentence summary and a couple of bullets really highlighting addressing the question. That's more what we're looking for than sort of voluminous paragraphs of information. So that's the application form. It's 9:45 or 9:44 right now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and then we can switch over to any questions. We have quite a few people on the call here, so we can start taking questions from folks that are interested. There we go. Anybody want to jump in with a question?
So Patrick, this one I might need your help with. Christine is asking the average cost per mile of trail planning. And I know that I'll let you jump in too, but I know a lot of this kind of just depends on the detail of the plan itself.
Yeah, that's a good question, Christine. I would say, let me use an example. The Prescott project was $10,000. I'm using Prescott because it's one I'm most familiar with. Prescott was $10,000 from the Trail Accelerator grant and $10,000 from the local community. So there's a $20,000 plan, and it resulted in a 20-mile trail plan. So, you know, you could say that's $1,000 a mile for trail planning. And that would vary, you know, if you had much more difficult terrain, if you had much easier terrain, if you were doing much more detailed pin flagging as opposed to a ribbon on a tree every 20 feet. So that's an example. And again, it would depend, you know, if we were doing a really detailed plan on a small area, let's say a city park in Atlanta, versus doing a much higher level plan on a 500,000 acre parcel, BLM parcel in Nevada, for example. You know, the money would result in a different product based on the size of the parcel and the level of detail that you wanted the plan to go into. But as an example, the Prescott plan was a $20,000 plan, and it resulted in a 40-page document. That's what we delivered, a 40-page written document, and a map and the GIS information that showed about 20 miles of trails. That's an example. Good question.
And the deliverable can be fairly varied in the sense of its size too. Like if you're looking really for just the map itself to work with, you know, that'll obviously be, you know, less costly match on your end. But it's really helpful to have some of the accompanying text and narrative. It kind of helps sell your project and inform people who aren't knowledgeable yet about the benefits of natural surface trails.
Yeah, Yeah, and regarding just any trail planning process, Marty, it's very, you know, important to emphasize that we can all have these grand visions of these wonderful things that we want to do, but once you have a document that's professionally written and professionally produced, and a map and the accompanying, you know, GIS data, that's a very powerful thing. It's not often the you know, the really sexy interest in trail building or you know, that phase of the project where you're getting rocks into place and you're building berms, but having a really good trail plan, that's, you know, that's the cornerstone of the project. That's what you bring to your governor. That's what you bring to your mayor. That's what you bring to the, you know, your community health agency, who maybe have large grant programs for these types of things. So having a really highly you know, really professional plan is well worth it. And we see over and over that those sort of ideas that crystallize into a planning process and a document that we deliver, those projects take off. You know, like the Wisconsin project, you know, they had the plan, and what they were able to do was leverage $400,000 from their city and private donations because they had a really quality plan. If they didn't have that, they probably wouldn't have got anywhere with that.
I had a quick question here. Yeah. So with the big push for inclusivity, are there any, I guess, techniques or ways that have been shown to be most effective that we could kind of work into a trail accelerator grant?
Yeah, you know, it varies across the country. Brian, where are you located?
So I'm in West Virginia.
Awesome. You know, it totally varies across the country. You know, I'm here in Arizona, and obviously we have, you know, very, very different types of diversity. You know, an example I would use is IMBA have done a long-term trail construction project in Anniston, Alabama, and Alabama and those southeastern states are known as having some of the highest obesity rates in the country. You know, so there's a piece of diversity there that a trail project is going to be very important in addressing. Here in Arizona, we have done probably 4 or 5 different trail plans on the Navajo Nation, working with the Native American populations on the Navajo Nation. Like I mentioned earlier, a project in DeQueen, Arkansas. This sentence sticks out at me, that they said that the proposal came from a community health organization, and one of the things that they focused on was smoking cessation among teenagers, and having a very easily accessible trail. Obviously, mountain biking isn't the silver bullet to every social ailment, but having a mountain bike trail system close to downtown where kids can participate in healthy activities, this applicant felt that it was going to be beneficial to their smoking cessation program. So, you know, the diversity question, I'd love to see more proposals, for example, that were addressing hand cycles and disabled access riders, but that doesn't exist in every community, you know. So the diversity question, in a nutshell, it's very important to us, and it's something that we really highlight and we really identify, because, you know, the bottom line is, most mountain bikers look like me, whereas it would be great to see mountain bikers that are representative of society in the broadest sense, you know. So if your application is going to get more disabled riders through a YMCA program, that's awesome. If there's a women's mountain bike, a girls and women's mountain bike program in the community that's going to get more of that population riding, that's awesome. If it's Native American populations, we've done a trail plan in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, that was impacting the tribes there. We've done them in another one with tribal entities in North Carolina, a lot here in Arizona. So it's different in every community, but please know that it's something that's very important when we're ranking the applications, that it's going to make a good effort to broaden the diversity of riders. Yeah, thanks for the question. Any other questions that people want to shout out, or any in this chat function, Marty, that you see?
Yeah, Barbara asked a really good question about sort of the timing of when the planning has to get done and then the construction following that? Does it need to be within the same year that the
Yeah.
grant's awarded?
Well, that's a great question. So, the application process is open this summer. We'll make selections in the fall. Then when we actually do the field work, so what the organization wins as a grant is staff persons, or one or two or maybe more staff persons from the Input Trail Solutions department, go to the community, spend time in the field, tramping around in the woods, meeting with local partners, meeting with the agencies, meeting with the local riders, having a community meeting, then writing up the plan and writing up the documents and delivering them back. And it sometimes takes a while. I would say that we have projects that were completed in the first cycle, like back in 2018, and maybe now they are just getting onto their city budget or into their parks budget, or the Forest Service have maybe allocated funding. So it doesn't, on our end, there isn't a strict timeline as to when we deliver the project that you have to then start building the trails. But we do find that, it's a Trail Accelerator grant, so it speeds things up to have a really quality plan.
Excellent. Any other questions, folks?
Got a question.
Go ahead, John.
So off of our poll, if you haven't answered that, please do so. But it looks like a good percentage of folks, their biggest barrier is lack of expertise. What advice would you give to those folks?
Well, first of all, I would say we think it's, if you have a lack of expertise, that's not a barrier to applying. That's wonderful, because we're happy to come in and be the group offering that expertise. So in the grant writing process, feel free to reach out to Marty if there are specific questions that you have about how much is this going to cost, or what's viable, or what kind of suggestions should we make. We want to help you through the process, as opposed to us closing the deadline and then you're kind of on your own and we'll make our selection. So if folks have a lack of experience in either grant writing and or trail planning, don't consider that that's a barrier. Like I said, there could be organizations on this call or interested in the plan, maybe a community health organization, and trails are nothing that they've ever done before, but they realize how important they are, and you don't understand the language about trail planning. The term bike optimized maybe is completely alien to you. That's completely fine. We really appreciate working with those groups that don't understand trail planning, and we're happy to come in and be the group that assists as you write your application form. And then if you're successful, we're the group that will come and do the trail design on the ground.
So let me scroll back to it. Molly is saying another barrier is convincing the powers that be that investing money in the planning has value. She's talking about how a bunch of folks with machetes and no plan can only accomplish so much.
Molly, where are you located, Molly?
I'm in Burnsville, which is about 45 minutes northeast of Asheville.
Yep.
And we're surrounded by public land and have a lot of potential for trail development.
Yeah.
And really could use help determining which is the most feasible site and what a trail connectivity and skills development areas and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm having trouble convincing the big cheeses that being planful in our efforts makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yeah, and there is quite often just this misunderstanding. If a community has never been involved in trail planning before, and they're just not aware of why they need to do this. I would say that in the past we have developed trail plans and trail construction projects all around the country, and there are certain plans that you could go to Marty, that Marty could send to you, like an example, and we could give you examples of, here's a trail plan that XYZ community did, and here's where it has gotten to 4 years later. So feel free to reach out to Marty and ask her for examples of those plans. Some of them are sort of confidential because they're still like in the permitting phase and such, but we have lots of examples of plans that we have done. And as I would say in the eastern states, lots of project examples in Tennessee and North Carolina and Georgia that we could send to you, that you can then show to whether it's the city council or the county commissioners, whoever it is, and say, hey, listen, here's an example of a trail plan that was successfully completed elsewhere, and look where it's at now, look what it has done for the community. But really emphasize with them that it's like building a house. You could go and get a pile of lumber and a hammer and nails and make something that looks like a house, but if you haven't had an architect do the design, it's maybe not going to be a very stable house, So getting the plan right before construction is number one.
Thanks, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, and you can reach out to Marty, and Mike Repiak typically has those, and he'll let you know which ones we can send out public. And
speaking of the plans, this was not a TAG grant, but we've done a feasibility study for the entire city of Omaha. And, on the surface, that sounds really boring, like it's still really far away from getting trails built, but it revealed so many great opportunities within the city of Omaha to get trails built. It showed that, a lot of the trail facilities were not located close to people that needed access to outdoor recreation. And it was extremely eye-opening for the whole community of Omaha. I feel like I wasn't part of that, but that's how it seemed reviewing it. So it's funny, a plan may seem like this, maybe, tedious bureaucratic thing to do, but it really lets a community look at itself and identify really good opportunities for outdoor recreation. All right, other questions?
I have a question. My name is Linda, and I'm in El Paso, Texas. And my question is, we have, as the BMBA here, our local chapter, have decided to stop fighting against our developers and try to start working with them, because they own a lot of the property around the mountain that's right in the middle of our city.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at creating a partnership or a coalition with them to try to do a bike park in their development or above and near their development. So if I were to write a grant for planning, or I think there was another one, I forget what it was, that might be better for us, the design of a bike park. Mm-hmm. Would that be looked upon because we're working with a developer?
Quite often, it really depends on public access. We'd love to know. Mm-hmm. I would say it would be worth chatting with Marty, and Marty could bring Mike and one of our other co-workers into the conversation to clarify. If the park was, if there was documentation that it was going to be open to the public, mm-hmm. That could be more viable. If it was simply that it's going to be blocked off and it's only for the local residents, that would be a very limited amount of people that could use it. So
no, we're looking at creating a trailhead for the bike park, and so mm-hmm. it would be open to the public. One of the issues is all the access points in these developments that are not sanctioned, and so we're looking to formalize it a little bit more. But it's new to El Paso to have all these. To have so many bikers right now, because we've taken our mountain for granted for a very long time, but there are a lot of trails out here. And so, that answers my question. Thank you.
And it looks like Mario, did you raise your hand?
Yes.
Go for it.
I am Mario. I am in Athens, Ohio, in Southeast Ohio. And we have a larger project being developed here in the Bailey's Trail system, and we have worked with the National Forest Service to develop this is part of the Wayne National Forest. But as part of the larger strategy, the city has a smaller park that is about 20 acres, and there is an interest on developing multi-user trails in this land. This part of the city does not have any outdoor recreation activities, but part of my my problem is that I don't know how to dimension the budget required for the project, right? Mm-hmm. So you know, we have access to the land on all of the interests of the community, but I'm not sure if the actual implementation is going to be you know, we're talking about $100,000 or a, you know, $500,000 investment, and that piece of information is critical to sort of see where and what and how we do that. So in terms of that situation, what would be your suggestion?
So are you talking about the did you say a 20-acre parcel?
Correct.
And I'm trying to paraphrase here. So let's say you have a 20-acre parcel and you want to you'd like the outcome to the deliverable to be a cost estimate for construction of a trail system on that parcel. Is that?
Yes, basically.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we could do. That's one of the deliverables would be that we could do the trail design and do the costing as to how much it would cost to develop the trails. That's something that certainly fits within the Trail Accelerator grant.
So in that light, then are we talking about a Trail Accelerator grant that would be you know, a 5,000 grant, a 10,000 grant, a 20,000 grant for?
I would.
What is the target in terms of the budget of the Accelerator grant to develop that?
That's a great question, and you know, every project is unique. The average grant that we give out is 14,500, and so then the average match is 14,500. So yours is well, every project's unique, but because the 20 acres is a relatively small parcel, but what you want on it is a very detailed process, you know. So I would say that would be your request would be, you know, I would say it would certainly be average or above average in terms of what you're requesting. And because the construction cost estimates, that's a very detailed process, you know, like the field work is one piece and then us developing a cost estimate. So I would say, you know, average to above the average amount would be the best answer. But what's in your favor is that it's not a huge parcel. Like 20 acres is a if you were, let's say you were wanting a very detailed plan and cost estimate on, you know, a 500,000 acre parcel in Nevada, that would be a very different cost, and it might even be outside of the realm of the Trail Accelerator grant. So I would say shoot for somewhere above the average with the amount of money. But like I said, and this is open to anybody, whenever you're writing your grant, feel free to reach out to Marty, because we have other staff who we know from all the examples of the plans we've done what the cost would be, or roughly on any specific site. So it's kind of unique. It's a different kind of a grant program. It's not like you've developed your budget and you know what you're going to spend and you're trying to find the money somewhere. You know, there's kind of two pieces here. It's us helping you work out how much it's going to cost to do it, and then us providing half of that cost. So I would shoot for somewhere above average, because it's a detailed process that you're looking for. But certainly reach out to Marty, who can chat with other staff to get more details on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're just
Excellent.
over 10 o'clock, or well, 10 o'clock my time, Pacific time. Any more questions before we jump off? Doesn't sound like we have any more, Marty. Back to you.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. Sorry, we've run a few minutes over. One last quick thing, if you happen to be with one of our INBA chapter local organizations, we do have another grant called the Dig In program that's also running right now, if you're trying to raise funds for another project. I won't belabor it here since we all need to go, but please do go to our website and check it out. It's another way to get some funds for your projects. But most of all, we really appreciate your time today, and we look forward to seeing your applications. Reach out for any help you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.